if you look at your chapter one, and again, I'm hoping that you guys are trying to use either the handouts or your textbook to read some of this material, because of course I cannot cover all of it in our class, but you will see how they are using this example of deductive versus inductive reasoning. So basically, when we're talking about inductive and deductive reasoning, we're basically saying, are you using a specific example to generalize, for a broader audience, or are you using something that is for a broader audience, so something that is more general and using it for a specific example? So that's kind of where the idea of deductive and inductive reasoning comes into play. For that matter, if you look at this example over here, they're talking about solving this equation. This is your quadratic equation, second degree polynomial. You can see we are using the quadratic formula to solve this. And in this case, you will see we are talking about using deductive reasoning, because we're taking the general idea that you have a quadratic equation and you can use this quadratic formula to solve a specific equation, right? So the general idea is quadratic formula should work for any kind of quadratic equation. And specifically, we are saying, okay, if I use it to this example that I have, I am able to use that to solve my example. And you can see we are able to get some values for our x variable, 1 plus square root of 2 and 1 minus square root of 2. They are not whole number answers, but they are answers to this equation. So in that same way, when we are talking about inductive reasoning is where you're going from a specific case and you're able to generalize it, for the whole example, or for the whole, whatever the situation might be. So some of these things I do want you to kind of look over and familiarize yourself with. Some of this terminology, as you can see, we're talking about a syllogism. We're saying this is basically where you have two different statements as part of your argument, or two different premises, and then it's followed by a conclusion. So you can kind of look at this example over here. We're saying all men are mortal. We're saying Socrates is a man. So you can see how we are kind of starting out with that generalization, and we are saying all men, right? So everybody is mortal. If Socrates is a man, then basically using this idea, we can come up with the conclusion that Socrates is mortal. On the other hand, you can kind of look at, the example that we just looked at with the polynomials. We're saying all second degree equations in one variable, which is x, can be solved by using the quadratic formula, right? So that's the general idea. And then we're getting it down to specific, and we're saying x squared equals 2x plus 1 is a second degree equation, which means this equation can be solved by the quadratic formula. So that's kind of on the same basis that you have this syllogism here, based on one of Aristotle's, most famous syllogisms that's out there. And you will see there are going to be different examples we get into based on the same idea of deductive reasoning. We also come up with Venn diagrams. This will be something that, again, you will see as part of your homework, because depending on how the statements are written, how these premises are written down, they have different formats to their sentence formation. And there's a little table here that kind of shows you what those statements or what those propositions can look like. So this is, as you can see, in the form of all SRP, kind of like all men are mortal. That's one of the statements that we looked at. No SRP, some SRP and some S are not P. So this is just the general, and you can see each one of these has a unique way of being represented when we write these, using Venn diagrams. So when you're talking about all SRP, so we are saying all men are mortal. So that bigger circle in a way is representing everything that's mortal, right? So that can be animals, that can be, vegetation, that can be anything that basically has a lifespan. And then part of that is the group of men. Here we are saying no SRP. So in this case, you will see that there is really nothing common between these two groups. So we are saying there's nothing in S, which is also going to be in P. And then you can see here, there's a little bit of an overlap. We are saying some SRP. So we're saying there's something which is in the group of the S, which is also going to be in the group of the Ps. And then no SRP. And in this case, you will see that it's actually blank where your circles overlap. So all of these are going to be different ways of kind of expressing, what your statements look like, what their Venn diagrams would look like, and how do we use them in our concept of, logic. Okay. So this is kind of where we're getting into a little bit more formal study of logic, right? Because this is going to be more kind of like the science-based study of it, instead of, kind of like the puzzles that we were doing were more on the general idea of logic. So this is what we want to do next week, is try and finish, kind of looking at some examples from chapter 1. But I do want to tell you guys, we are not going to be able to do every type of example or look at every type of information that is in your textbook or your handouts. So you definitely want to try, like I said, reading through your textbook or reading through the handouts. You want to try looking at the video lectures that I have from last year. So the fall 2020 video lectures that are available to you in D2L. And then mainly in class, we will be focusing on different types of examples to try and get you guys comfortable with your homework type of problem. So that's kind of going to be our next week. And then again, just to remind you, September 8th is when we are taking our chapter 1 exam. So that's kind of what we are building up to. So for next week, we will go over chapter 1. And then the following week, we have Monday, which we can use for catching up anything that we didn't get to do next week. And then on the 8th, you will take your exam. So remember, that day, you will be coming into class and basically just working on the exam, because I would like to give you that full class time to take your exam. So there will be no lecture on the 8th. You will just come in, log into Zoom like you normally do. I will give you your password. You will take the exam. And when you're done with the exam, you will be able to leave. Okay, so just kind of looking at the next couple of weeks. So if you have any questions, obviously let me know. And then, like I said, we'll dive into chapter 1 starting Monday. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, guys, you are good to go. And I will see you on Monday morning. So be careful, everyone. Have a great weekend and take care. Stay safe, guys.
Happy weekend.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So for exams, are we ever gonna